Some people simply don't know how to respect boundaries. You can ask nicely, you can warn them, you can even draw a map with red arrows flashing. Don't do that. And they'll still do it. And that's exactly how my war against the loosest woman in the neighborhood began. The creature in question lived 2 houses down from me, and for some reason that not even the gods of logic could explain. She decided that my garage was hers. No, you didn't read that wrong. She parked in my space every single day, and before anyone asks. No, it wasn't a mistake, because the first time, even I thought it might be a mistake. Maybe she'd confused the house, maybe she was in a hurry. So I did what any civilized person would do. I went and told her I knocked on her door. She opened it and looked at me like I was a late delivery man. Hi, so, I think you parked in my garage by accident. The woman looked at me, blinked a few times, and replied without the slightest trace of embarrassment. Oh yes, it's just that my space is very tight, and yours is right in the middle. You know, much easier to get in and out of, as if that explained anything. I stood there for a few seconds waiting for her to realize the absurdity of what she had just said. But as her frown had been cemented all her life, I realized she wasn't going to say anything else. So I took a deep breath and explained the obvious. Okay, but this is my garage. I live here. The answer, a little smile and an "oh." Right? Followed by the door. Closing in my face. In my face, I swear. I've never felt more like setting fire to a car in my entire life. From that day on, a daily nightmare began. When I got home, there was her car. I'd have to knock on the door, wait for her to get out as if she were doing me a favor, and then only after a lot of ill will would she take the car away. Not in a hurry, not with apologies, but with that, "Oh, what a drag that guy." Again, look. You could see on her face that she had no intention of stopping. Complain. I complained. I went to the neighborhood association, talked to the neighbors, even tried to convince her through civilized dialogue, and do you know what her brilliant solution was? Why don't you park on the street? On the street. On the street. Since I have a garage that I pay for. I wanted to believe she was joking, but she was serious. And that's when I realized this war needed a better plan. The first step was to make it clear that patience had run out. So one day I woke up early and moved my car very close to hers. I left only about 10 centimeters of space. Then I went into the kitchen for coffee and waited, and it was a delight to see her trying to get out. She tried to open the door and so surprised there was no room. She walked around, huffed, looked around, and after half an hour rang my doorbell. "Can you move your car so I can get out?" I could. But I could also pretend I didn't hear and enjoy my coffee in peace. So that's what I did. I only went outside 2 hours later. "Wow, you're still here." "I didn't even notice," I said, with the biggest fake smile in the world. She didn't think it was funny, but I did a lot. And for a brief moment, I thought I'd won. But I had underestimated this woman's level of slack. Because the next day when I got home, her car was in my driveway again. She hadn't given up, and I realized that I wasn't going to either. Only this time I was going to stop playing fair, because she didn't deserve respect. She deserved a lesson. And I already had a plan. They say patience is a virtue, but I'm no saint. And that woman had already exceeded my quota a long time ago, when I saw her car in my driveway again. After all the warnings, arguments, and petty revenge, that's when I decided it's over. If she didn't want to leave for good, she was going to leave in the worst possible way. I sat on the sofa, stared at the ceiling, and started to think, could I call the police? Yes, but I knew they'd treat it as a neighborly quarrel and tell me to talk it out. Could I call a tow truck now? We're talking, but not an ordinary tow truck. If I was going to go to the trouble of towing that wretch of a car, I was going to make sure she never had the nerve to park there again. And that's when the idea came to me. Why not send the car straight to the scrapyard? Sound cruel, yes. But considering that this woman had basically taken over my garage for months and treated me like I was the nuisance, I'd say it was a fair lesson. So with a revengeful smile on my face, I picked up the phone and made the call. I called a car removal service pretending to be a concerned citizen. "Hi, there's an abandoned car in my garage. It's been there for days and I can't get in touch with the owner. Can you remove it?" The attendant asked me a few questions, asked for details, and then gave me the answer I wanted to hear. "We can pick it up right now. The standard destination would be an impound yard, but if you authorize it, we can take it straight to a partner junkyard." I stopped. I held in my laughter. Take it to the junkyard. That's it. Plan in action. About 40 minutes later, A giant tow truck pulled into my driveway. The driver got down, looked at the car, and then at me. "Is that the abandoned car?" "That's the one," I replied, feigning indignation with magical efficiency. He hooked up the cables and started to lift the car. I sat on the balcony with a cup of coffee ready to watch the show. But then came the best moment of the day. She arrived. The woman appeared at the end of the street returning from who knows where, and stopped in the middle of the sidewalk as soon as she saw the tow truck lifting her car for a few seconds. She froze, trying to process what was happening, and then she exploded. "What are you doing? That's my car!" She came marching out, furious, pointing her finger as if she was going to resolve the situation with the force of hatred, but the tow truck driver, he didn't care. "You're in the wrong garage, ma'am. The owner asked for it to be removed." She turned to me with anger. "You can't do that." "Yes, I can." "I did," I replied, smiling. That's when she tried to be clever. "I'll call the police. This is robbery." Ah. But I was already prepared. I took out my cell phone and showed them an email I had sent to the neighborhood association, informing them that an unknown car was occupying my garage. Now the car was officially a trespasser. And do you know what the law says about trespassers on private property? The owner can have it removed. She realized that I was 2 steps ahead, and that's when the tow truck started moving. "No, no, no, my car." She tried to run after it, but it was too late. The vehicle was already being taken straight to the scrapyard without stopping. And for the first time, I saw the terror on her face. The truth had sunk in. She had played with the wrong person. Now do you think this is the end of the story number? Because this woman didn't know how to lose the next day. She showed up at my door, furious, screaming like a parrot overdosed on coffee. "You have to pay me for my car." I took a deep breath, tried not to laugh in her face, and replied, "But why didn't you? Mark there every day. I thought you wanted to leave it with me." She was speechless for a moment, and then came her final card. "I'm gonna sue you." Ah, that was the best part. Because before I could respond, one of the neighbors shouted from across the street, "Yes, sue. So he can charge you for the garage rent." And the worst part, the whole neighborhood started laughing because everyone knew, everyone saw her doing it for months. She lost. And what about me? Well, I just slammed the door in her face the same way she did to me in the beginning. And now the tables were turning after the tow truck took her car straight to the scrapyard. I knew the war wasn't over yet. Slackers never accept defeat. At first, they always try one last trick, thinking they can turn the tide with a stroke of luck. And of course, this woman was no different the next day. I was enjoying the peace, finally managing to park in my own garage, when I saw her figure marching up to my house. This time, she wasn't wearing her usual arrogant pose. She was snorting with rage. Think of a bull about to charge. Now multiply that by 1,000. She rang the doorbell so hard that she almost ripped the knob off when I opened the door. She started screaming, "You're going to pay me for my car." I expected something like this, so I kept my cool. "Well, it wasn't mine," I said, smiling. "Or was it? Because if it was, then you were breaking into my garage. And if it wasn't, well, it was abandoned on my property." She turned red. She looked like she was going to explode right there in front of me. "I'm going to sue you. That was theft." Oh dear, she really doesn't learn. I put my hand on my chin, pretending to think. "But you see, if you sue, then we'll have to go to court. And do you know what happens there?" She crossed her arms out of patience. "What?" And then came the final blow. "There. I can claim compensation for the months you occupied my garage without permission. It may not seem like much, but you know, if you add up all the time, it'll add up to quite a sum." It was as if her brain had locked up. I swear you could hear her neurons squeaking. And then finally she realized that she was trapped. If she filed a lawsuit, she'd probably end up owing me money in the end. For the first time, she kept quiet, and that, my friends, was a victory. She stared at me for a while, trying to think of some miraculous argument. But as she couldn't find anything, she decided to go down the classic slacker route. Emotional blackmail. "You've destroyed my life." She began putting her hand to her chest, as if she were a victim in a Mexican soap opera. "Now I don't have a car. I have children. How am I going to get them to school? How am I going to work? You've ruined me. Oh, you poor thing. Too bad." That wasn't my problem, because, at the end of the day, she dug her own grave. So I gave the simplest, most honest answer I could. You shouldn't have parked in my garage. It was as simple as that. And that's when she realized there was no point in crying. There was no excuse. No blackmail to make me feel guilty. The only one to blame was her. And when she saw that she wasn't going to get anything out of me, the woman freaked out. She took a step back, her eyes boiling with hatred, and then in a moment of pure insanity, she spat on the floor of my balcony. Yes, she spat. I stood there staring at her, processing the scene, and then I started to laugh out loud. Because at the end of the day, that was the greatest proof that I had won. She had no more arguments, she'd lost completely, and the only thing left was this childish, pathetic attitude. So without saying another word, I simply shut the door in her face. The woman stood outside screaming to herself for a few seconds, and then she left. Finally, the nightmare was over. Over the next few days, she tried to pretend that nothing had happened. She walked down the street without looking at anyone, avoiding any eye contact, as if she thought everyone would forget. But the neighborhood didn't forget. Everyone knew what used to be forced smiles and polite good mornings were now judgmental looks and awkward silence. She was no longer the HOA lady who ran everything. Now she was just the crazy girl who lost her car because she thought she could do whatever she wanted, and little by little shame won out until one day I saw something wonderful in front of her house, a moving truck. Yes, she was leaving. I don't know if she sold the house, if she was evicted, or if she simply decided to run away from the humiliation. But the fact is that after months of hell she was gone. And what about me? Well, I did what any sensible person would do. I sat on my balcony, made myself a nice cup of coffee, and watched each box being loaded onto the truck with the biggest smile in the world, because in the end, justice was done. If there's one thing I've learned in this life, it's that sloppy people never accept losing at first. Even after her car was towed straight to the scrapyard, after the public humiliation, after realizing that I could sue her for months of occupying my garage, she still tried to get revenge. Yes, she didn't go away quietly because people like that need to make one last fuss before disappearing. And her last move was so ridiculous that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost after the pathetic scene on my balcony, I thought I'd never have to deal with her again. But a few weeks later when I got home, I noticed something strange in my garage there. Right in the middle of the space where her car used to be, was an old mattress thrown about in any way. At first I thought it was just garbage that someone had left there by mistake. But then I saw it. There was a letter taped to it. I went over, picked up the paper, and started reading. And my God, it was the most ridiculous thing I've ever read in my life. The letter went something like this. Since you took my car away from me, this spot can now be my new home. I hope you're happy to leave a mother without transportation. If a mattress here bothers you so much, imagine losing a car, and at the end a bad drawing of a car, and a sad emoji. Yes, a hand-drawn sad emoji. I paused for a moment, trying to decide whether to laugh or throw the damn thing in the garbage can. But the funniest thing was that the letter made it clear that she hadn't learned anything. At no point did she say, "Sorry for taking up your garage for months," or "Maybe I overreacted" number. She still wanted to play the victim as if it was my fault. As if I had broken into her house and stolen her car by force when she was the one who parked where she shouldn't have. So I did the only sensible thing. I picked up the mattress, threw it in the garbage can, and got on with my life. But she wasn't finished yet. The next day, a neighbor texted me. "Did you see what she posted in the neighborhood group?" Now I knew something good was coming. I opened my cell phone, and of course there was her latest attempt to make a scandal. Her post read, "Attention neighbors. I have been the victim of a cruel act. A certain resident here in the neighborhood, I won't name names but everyone knows who he is, had my car replaced to the old iron without my consent. Now I have no transportation, and my family has been affected. What kind of person does that to someone?" The comments a mockery fest, because the whole neighborhood already knew the story. And to my delight, the neighbors started rubbing the truth in her face. One of the neighbors posted the print out of the letter she had left on my mattress. Yes, someone came by. My garage saw the letter, took a picture, and posted it on the group for everyone to see, and the whole neighborhood started laughing. She became a public joke, and after a few minutes she deleted the post and left the neighborhood group, because the humiliation was too great over the next few days. She acted like a ghost. She no longer went out to talk to her neighbors. She didn't do her HOA president rounds that no one respected. She knew she was defeated. And then one fine Saturday morning the moving truck showed up. Yes, She was leaving for good. I stood on the balcony with my coffee enjoying every moment, and the moment she got into the car and slammed the door. Our gazes met for a second. I gave a short nod and a smile, and she looked away. Because deep down she knew she'd lost. After she moved out, the whole neighborhood entered a new era of peace. No absurd rules, no neighbors who thought they owned everything without the daily stress of finding a strange car in my driveway. The neighbors even joked, "Now, your garage is really yours." And I laughed because in the end, I didn't have to shout, I didn't have to fight, I didn't have to lose my temper. I just had to let her bury herself, her car scrap metal, her reputation. It became a joke, and me. I'm left with my parking space free, a good cup of coffee in my hand, and the certainty that I did the right thing. And of course, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Thank you.